The room was tense, thick with expectation. Cameras lined every corner, journalists whispered into microphones, and the audience waited for a moment that would define an era. At the center stood Joyce Meyer, calm, authoritative, and unwavering, known for speaking truth without fear. Across from her, Senator Kennedy carried the weight of a family dynasty, his confidence polished from years of privilege. But tonight, that confidence would face a test unlike any before. It began almost imperceptibly. A pause, a breath held across the room, then the words that would cut through decades of carefully curated image, "You're not a Christian." Silence followed, stretching long enough to make hearts pound. Every eye was fixed on Meyer. Every microphone caught the resonance. Kennedy's face flickered with surprise, a subtle loss of control, while the audience leaned forward, collectively unsure how to react. In that instant, the room shifted. Authority was challenged by truth, image confronted authenticity, and the world witnessed the collision of privilege and principle. The moment was electric, irreversible, and immediately viral in essence. It was not merely a statement, it was a moral reckoning delivered with calm precision. The tension, the drama, the stakes, it was all concentrated in 37 seconds, and the audience knew they were witnessing history. The significance of Meyer's words was rooted in history and lived experience. Kennedy represented both a political dynasty and a public persona of faith, one that many had admired and questioned. Meyer, a voice for the marginalized and the unseen, confronted the gap between claimed spirituality and authentic practice. This was not a personal attack, it was a confrontation with accountability, a challenge to the assumptions that power and privilege automatically confer moral authority. The audience felt the tension acutely. Each pause, each deliberate word carried weight far beyond the room. Social dynamics, public perception, and cultural symbolism all hung in balance. Progressive viewers, immigrants, and identity-pride audiences immediately recognized the moment's resonance. Truth had the power to pierce even the most imposing shields of authority. It was a lesson in moral courage for anyone who had ever felt unseen or dismissed. Meyer's calm authority contrasted starkly with Kennedy's momentary disorientation. The collision of their personas, experience versus legacy, authenticity versus inheritance, set the stage for what would ripple far beyond the auditorium. Every subtle gesture, every hesitant reaction, became part of the story. And just as the audience processed what had just occurred, the question loomed, what would happen next? The suspense was palpable, and the nation watched as the moral and emotional stakes climbed higher with every passing second. Kennedy's public image had long been cultivated as emblematic of both legacy and moral authority. A scion of a family steeped in politics, he carried the air of entitlement that comes from inherited privilege. Generations had elevated him, painted him as principled, and audiences were conditioned to defer to his reputation. Yet beneath the polished exterior lay contradictions. His faith, often displayed in ceremonial or performative ways, lacked the grounding in lived experience that Meyer embodied. For decades, Kennedy had relied on inherited credibility. Public speeches, appearances at religious events, and media portrayals reinforced the notion that he represented virtue and spiritual conviction. Privilege shielded him from scrutiny, his power often rendered him untouchable. But those very advantages created a vulnerability. When confronted with someone like Meyer, whose authority was derived not from name or platform but from authenticity and lived moral rigor, that veneer risked cracking. This was a man accustomed to respect as a default, not earned through demonstrated integrity. He could debate policies, navigate media cycles, and charm audiences, but his spiritual authority, for all its appearances, was now under direct examination. Meyer's statement was not just a critique, it was a mirror reflecting years of reliance on status over substance. Kennedy's subtle discomfort, a fleeting tightening of jaw and narrowing of eyes, revealed a man suddenly conscious that legacy alone could not protect him. The audience, attuned to the clash of experience and entitlement, sensed the tension. Progressive viewers, immigrants, and identity-pride communities felt recognition of their own experiences. Inherited authority does not equal moral rightness. And as Kennedy processed the moral confrontation before him, the stage was set for a confrontation that would test not just composure, but integrity itself. The story had shifted, the villain's confidence now teetered, and the world held its breath for what was about to unfold. Joyce Meyer's authority was forged through years of dedication, personal sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to truth. Her voice had emerged from a life intimately familiar with struggle, resilience, and the challenge of being underestimated. For immigrant communities, marginalized groups, and identity-pride audiences, Meyer represented a rare combination: courage grounded in experience, conviction validated by action, and faith demonstrated through deeds rather than lineage. Her life had been a series of tests, each requiring moral clarity under pressure. She had confronted institutions, societal expectations, and public criticism with a calm that commanded attention. Unlike Kennedy, her authority was not inherited, it was earned, step by step, through discipline, authenticity, and perseverance. This confrontation was not the first time she had challenged perceived power, it was the culmination of a lifetime of observing discrepancies between stated belief and lived practice. Every audience member who understood her journey recognized the stakes. Here was a hero whose credibility came from the trenches of life, who had navigated adversity with integrity, and who now stood poised to confront a man whose privilege had long insulated him from accountability. The subtle empathy, the moral resonance, and the lived authenticity gave her words a weight that mere public profile could not match. By the time she spoke, Meyer was not just confronting Kennedy, she was embodying the collective voices of those who had long been dismissed or misrepresented. The audience felt this resonance viscerally, every word validated their experiences, their struggles, and their pride. And as the first 37 seconds of confrontation approached, the suspense escalated. This was the moment her preparation, moral clarity, and lived authority would meet the stage, and the outcome would reverberate far beyond the room. The confrontation began in measured tones, but the intensity grew with every second. Kennedy attempted to regain composure, leaning on inherited authority and charm, a practiced smile masking uncertainty. Meyer, unmoved, allowed the statement to resonate, letting silence magnify its impact. Every audience member felt the tension, sensing the moral stakes embedded in the verbal exchange. Subtle insults, dismissive gestures, and the weight of legacy clashed with calm precision. Kennedy tried to redirect, to reassert dominance, but Meyer's presence and measured words created a counterforce impossible to ignore. The disparity between performance and authenticity became undeniable, and the audience watched as the once confident figure struggled to maintain poise. Each pause became strategic, each glance a battlefield. Meyer's authority amplified the contrast, experience grounded in integrity versus inherited privilege thinly veiled as moral certainty. For the viewers, the tension was tangible. For immigrants and identity-pride communities, the confrontation mirrored personal experiences of having truth and authenticity validated against entrenched systems. The 37 seconds were electric. Every reaction, every hesitation, every subtle micro-expression was amplified in the room and across the digital world. Suspense reached its peak, the audience waited for the moment that would decide not just the debate, but the narrative of authority, authenticity, and moral accountability. Then it happened. Joyce Meyer, with calm precision, delivered the moral truth: "You're not a Christian." The words landed, measured, deliberate, reverberating in the room. Silence followed, tension thick enough to be felt in the chest. Kennedy's eyes widened, a micro-expression betraying the weight of realization that legacy and performative faith could not shield him. Every word was strategic. Meyer did not raise her voice, she did not dramatize. Instead, she allowed clarity and integrity to dominate, letting the audience internalize the contrast between authentic conviction and inherited image. The pause that followed gave the statement room to breathe, creating suspense, magnifying the moral weight. Cameras captured every second, audiences leaned in, and the digital sphere ignited as the statement rippled across social media. The crumbling was subtle but undeniable. Kennedy attempted to respond, but the room had shifted. He was no longer dictating the narrative, he was reacting, floundering under scrutiny that decades of privilege had not prepared him for. The audience, particularly those from marginalized communities, erupted internally with recognition: truth had a voice, courage had a platform, and integrity had just reclaimed authority. Meyer's calm counterattack extended beyond the spoken words. Each subtle gesture, measured pause, and unwavering gaze reinforced her authority. She had transformed what could have been a fleeting confrontation into a defining moment, establishing a moral hierarchy anchored in authenticity, courage, and lived experience. The 37 seconds became a seismic event, demonstrating that authority without integrity is vulnerable, and that authenticity carries influence far beyond conventional power structures. The social media wave was immediate. Clips, hashtags, reactions, and debates surged, reinforcing the lesson: courage, clarity, and truth can dismantle performative authority in moments. Progressive audiences, immigrants, and identity-pride communities absorbed the lesson. The suspense of what Kennedy would do next hung over the public conversation, amplifying the significance and cementing Meyer's position as the hero of the moment. The impact spread instantly. Videos circulated across social platforms, garnering millions of views, with hashtags amplifying Meyer's moral clarity. Commentary erupted, journalists, influencers, and ordinary citizens debated, dissected, and celebrated the 37-second confrontation. Memes and clips highlighted Kennedy's subtle discomfort and Meyer's composed authority, reinforcing the contrast between privilege and authenticity. For progressive viewers, immigrants, and identity-pride communities, the resonance was profound. The confrontation became symbolic, a demonstration that truth can pierce institutional authority. Online communities shared personal experiences, connecting Meyer's bravery with their own struggles for recognition and dignity. The moment was more than spectacle, it was validation. Even mainstream media could not ignore the ripple effect. Talk shows revisited the event, and political commentators analyzed the implications of Kennedy's response, or lack thereof. It became clear, a moral reckoning had occurred. The brief confrontation catalyzed reflection on faith, authenticity, and privilege. Social discourse was alive, vibrant, and irrevocably altered. Meyer's statement reframed the narrative. She had not humiliated, she had illuminated the difference between authentic faith and performative authority. For viewers, the lesson was inspiring: moral courage is independent of wealth, legacy, or public image. Authenticity, integrity, and clarity are the true measures of influence. Her calm demonstration of truth validated those who have been marginalized, dismissed, or misrepresented. The audience recognized that standing by one's principles, even briefly, can resonate powerfully and catalyze change. The confrontation offered both reflection and motivation, to challenge performative authority, to embody integrity, and to speak truth with conviction. The emotional uplift was tangible. Progressive audiences, immigrants, and identity-pride communities felt empowerment, a reminder that their voices and values matter. Meyer's moment became more than confrontation. It was a model of courage and moral authority, an affirmation of authenticity over inheritance. The 37 seconds had ended, but the impact was just beginning. Joyce Meyer's clarity, calm, and courage transformed a brief confrontation into a lesson for the nation. Kennedy's discomfort underscored a timeless truth: authority without authenticity is fragile, while moral courage resonates. For viewers, the message was clear: integrity matters. Speaking truth, even in moments of risk, empowers, validates, and inspires. The confrontation became a call to action, not for conflict, but for principled engagement, for standing firm in values, for embracing authenticity. As audiences reflected, shared, and discussed, the takeaway endured: your voice, your conviction, and your courage can make history, even in 37 seconds. Subscribe, share, and participate in shaping a world where integrity and dignity prevail.